Running your own business, I think, is one of the most challenging things that you can ever do. And the fact that as orthodontists, we have to carry such large amounts of weights and have to be on and be there for so many people, to me, has taught me that I really want to join a team. I don't see myself as a solo practitioner, but I love being part of a team. And that's something I hope to have in future private practice.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Orthopreneurs Podcast. Today, we are coming live to you from somewhere other than the United States. We are coming to you from, I think, Japan, correct?
Ohio gozaimasu from Japan.
Well, listen, I heard. I learned, don't touch my mustache. Doitoimashite, right? Don't touch my mustache.
That means you're welcome.
So I learned that from a sushi bar owner many years ago named Rocky. What a great Japanese name. So we're here today with Commander Corinne Devin. Welcome, Commander.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And I want to give a disclaimer for you before we start this today. As you'll hear in Corinne, Commander, Doctor. I don't know what we'll call you today. She's an orthodontist. She practices in the US Navy. And so I want to be crystal clear here for all of us and for the US government and the NSA who might be listening in. The opinions that Commander Devin gives during this interview are hers and hers alone. They do not in any way represent the opinions of the US Navy, the government, the president, or anybody else who might be affiliated with the US government in any way, shape, or form. How'd I do? Was that good?
That was perfect. Thank you. Yes, the Department of Defense will be very pleased.
Yes. So now that we got that out of the way, I'm really, really happy to have this peer of ours on the podcast, because when you hear her story, when you hear her background, there is so much cool stuff in here that this is like one of those podcasts. It just gets me so excited and happy because we got so many great stories. And so let's start the way I start all of them. You want to give us 60 to 90 seconds. How did you end up as an orthodontist in the Navy where you are now for the last 16 years serving, which thank you on behalf of myself and many others out there. We really appreciate your service. We don't forget, and we really, it means a lot to us. So how did you end up where you are?
Thank you. I love what I do, so it makes it very easy to serve. I was born and raised in the military. So I was drinking the Kool-Aid at a very young age. I was born on a military base. And if you told my 8-year-old self that I would go and deploy to the Middle East and do the job that my father was doing, I would probably tell you were crazy. But life has a funny way of surprising you. And when I was in college, I was a communications major, but I remembered volunteering with my dad on mobile dental vans. And I remember this little girl that walked in, she was 8 years old, and we were in Reno, Nevada at the time. And I remembered my dad showing that her first molars were completely bombed out. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm not in some abandoned war zone. This is 100% preventable in my hometown. And I wanted to be a voice. I wanted to speak up, but I realized with my background that I would have a lot more credibility and a lot more opportunities if I was a dentist. And going to dental school was really expensive. And so I looked at options, and the Navy, the Army, the Air Force all offer a scholarship called the Health Profession Scholarship Program. So I applied and I put on my application, I wanted to be a pediatric dentist. And towards the end of dental school, I was working with a pediatric dentist when an orthodontist pulled me aside and said, I think you have the personality of an orthodontist. And I'm like thinking in my head, I never had braces. My dad was a general dentist. What does the personality of an orthodontist mean?
Right.
And I remember him taking his board certification paper off the wall, making a copy, scratching out his name and putting my name. And he's like, this is going to be you. Oh. Well, I entered the Navy. And I actually did get into a couple pediatric residencies but due to the rules of the Navy, I was not able to go. They have to let you go off to residency, and they need me as a general dentist. So I did a 1-year fellowship. And while I'm doing my 1-year fellowship, an AGD, the orthodontist there said the same thing to me. And he's one of my mentors today, Captain Scott Curtis, who just retired. And the oral surgeon said it. And I fell in love with the orthodontic surgery component of how we really can do such incredible things for our service members. In order to apply to the military, you have to show that you're willing to do anything. So I raised my hand. I volunteered to deploy to Iraq. I was in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2009. Wow. And right before I left, I turned in my application to apply for residency. And so when I turn in my application, it has to go through the Navy. The Navy actually has to select who will even be allowed to leave the Navy to go to any residency program.
Wow.
So I'm competing. There's Army, Air Force. We're all putting our name in the hats, whether, you're doing orthodontics, oral surgery, you name it. And so I find out summer of 2009 while I'm in Al Asad, Iraq, that I got selected.
Wow.
So then I start getting my applications ready. My family back in California, I spent like $900 getting the transcripts, the letters of recommendation. I'm working on this. I'm prepared to wake up at 2:00 in the morning in Iraq, find a workable phone, do interviews, whatever I need to do. And I got offered a spot into the military's tri-service orthodontic residency program in San Antonio, Texas.
Very cool.
And so, so I left Iraq in September of 2009. We were shifting to Afghanistan, would have gone if I wasn't going off to residency. And then I did my residency in San Antonio, 2010 to 2012. And so 4 years later, got my board certification, and that orthodontist and his wife, I'm to them like the daughter they never have. And it's just funny how life can really throw you on a ride. So I've been an orthodontist in the Navy now for over 10 years and still have a lot to learn, love what I do in every place I've been. And I'm getting ready to do my 9th move in 16 years. Has showed me that I still have a lot to learn, but I'm very grateful for the people who've helped me along the way.
That's awesome. My dad was a captain in the Army when I was born in the dental services
No way.
at 5th Army Headquarters, Fort Sheridan in Illinois. And that's where I was born. And so, my dad was in the service. I had a great grandfather who fought for the US in World War I. But as you and I started, and I even told you that I went through MEPS, I was about to go into the Navy, and then my dad broke his back and I needed a deferment, and I ended up working for him and keeping the practice alive instead of going to the Navy. But when I think, like, I'm proud of the fact that, like, my dad was in the Army, my great grandfather was in the Army, like, wow, that's kind of cool. Now we're going to drop some facts on them, a little bit about your family. So how many generations in a row have served in the U.S. military in your family, Corinne?
9. We go all the way back to the Revolutionary War. So.
Did you people hear that? Did you hear that? She has relatives who fought in the Revolutionary War. They fought for England. No, I'm kidding. They didn't fight for England. I kid. But that's like remarkable that every person in every generation in your family has had somebody fight for the U.S. military, going from the Revolutionary War until today. That's a heck of a chain to be continuing. That's impressive.
It is. And I mean, it's not with every branch of service. So right now, who's active in my family is my cousin is a pilot in the Navy. She's in the reserves. I'm a dentist. My brother is a submariner up in Washington reserves. My cousin is Army Reserves. He flies Blackhawks. And if he's not flying Blackhawks, he's flying for Alaska Airlines. And we're it for right now. And then we'll see, what happens next. But one interesting fact that most people don't know is that my entire family, all the kids, we decided to deploy all in 2009. So we all decided to do it to our family at once, because doing it at separate times we didn't think was a good thing. So
that's amazing.
We were all in different parts of the Middle East during that year.
And by the way, 9 generations straight is kind of cool. I mean, it would have been cooler if they were all dentists, but hey, my great grandfather was a dentist in the Union Army, right? But joking aside, I can't even imagine what it's like sitting around the table when you've got a submariner, you've got a helicopter pilot, you have a fixed wing aircraft pilot, we've got you, and you're all sitting like, yeah, whatever, no big deal. I mean, the stories must be truly amazing when you sit around, because I have a friend who's in the Merchant Marines, and when he tells me his stories of traveling, some of the stories are just unbelievable. And so good for you guys. And by the way, you're in Japan now. This is your 9th move. You're coming back to the States in 2 weeks, which means by the time this airs, it will you're probably be stateside already. Where have you been and for how long?
So I'm moving to San Diego is where I'm going to be. Which base, I'm not quite sure yet, but I'll be moving to San Diego and report in June. But as far as I started my career in San Diego and doing my fellowship, so I bounced around from the Marine Corps Recruit Depot to the hospital to Naval Base to Coronado, working with various things, because I was a general dentist for 3 years. And then I was operational with Miramar and Camp Pendleton. And then I was in Al Asad, Iraq with Combat Logistics Battalion. And so lots of good stories there. And then I came back to San Diego because I was technically on loan. And then I went to Lackland Air Force Base for my orthodontic residency program. After that, I went to Japan. So I was up in Yokosuka, which is near Tokyo. And I was there for about a little after 2.5 years. And that was great because I actually got to work 2 practices on 2 islands. So there was 3 of us there. And so I managed with my colleagues at the hospital, the base there. And then I would fly to Kishu. We have a base called in Sasebo, and I took care of families there. So I flew down every 6 weeks. And then I came back to San Diego and got to teach, got to lead the continuing education courses for pediatrics and orthodontics with my fellow colleagues. And I was looking to get out, and I got a phone call that in 2 weeks, I had to pack up my stuff and leave for Italy.
Wow.
And when they serve you orders, you have to go. So sold my car to Carmex the day before, had some wonderful friends float, and I was at Naval. It's now changed to Naval Air Training Command Sigonella. So it was on the island of Sicily. And I was there during the pandemic, loved it. It was one of my best tours of my career. And from there, during the pandemic, they needed someone to come to Iwakuni, Japan. So I'm near Hiroshima. So I'm in the southern part of Japan. And I've been here for the last few years, also during the pandemic, but we're now open. The country is now open so people can come visit. And I'm coming back to San Diego. So you can tell we, in the Navy orthodontic world, we're only in about 7 places. So you're hearing some of the same things twice because we're in pretty much Italy, Spain, and Japan over the seas, and in the States, California, Texas, and the DC area.
Right on. I mean, when I was almost in the Navy, I remember asking a lot of questions about what it was like on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure things have changed in the last 75 years since I was ready to go in. But what is a normal day like? Because like as orthodontists, if you speak to most people in the US, right, our day typically starts around 8 a.m., work till maybe 5 p.m. Maybe you have a late day. Maybe there's an occasional Saturday, treating mostly kids in most practices, some adults. What's it like being an orthodontist in the Navy? What's your day-to-day like?
It varies by base. So I would definitely tell you stateside versus Japan, it's been very different for me, and even Italy. But I'll tell you what a day-to-day life is like right now with the Marines in Japan. So depending on the day, I'm either up either at 3:30 or 4 a.m. in the morning. I like to work out before I go to work because I am on a base with very, very fit individuals, and I am constantly tested by them in my physical fitness level. So I want to make sure that I can keep up with them. And that usually starts with a really intense workout. And 3 days a week during lunch, they actually ask us to work out. So today, during my lunch hour, I'll be lifting very heavy weights and doing cross training with a group of them during my lunch hour. I usually get to the office by 6:30 because I was a previous department head. So I usually have meetings from 6:30 to 7:30, sometimes to 8. And during 7 to 8, I actually have it as my dedicated sick call hour. So that way, any sick calls that come in before the day gets busy, because I treat children overseas in the military, we are able to treat children as well as adults. But back in the States, we are only treating active duty to adults versus here, they're called dependents, people, family members. And I do that depending on the day, either till about 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, break for lunch. Sometimes I'm running errands, sometimes meetings, sometimes catching up on charts. And then see patients from 1 to 4, depending on the day. Some days they throw on training. So for example, next week, I can't see patients Friday because we are doing, it's called 101 days of summer. Some days I have inspections, and you just learn to be really, really flexible. A major difference between private practice and the military is we don't really have control of our assistants. Our assistants are usually very brand new, and we usually only have them for 6 months to a year at the most. And they're running the front desk. They're doing the stuff back in CSR. So I don't have one that's just dedicated to taking photos. I don't have one that's just dedicated to the front desk. So the front desk, our people are shared among 16 other dental officers.
Wow.
So it's so the staff of the clinic I work in is about 60 people. And so it's a very heavy group multi-practice. But what I love is, we don't charge for treatment. We can offer the full Cadillac of things to our patients. And it's really awesome that I work with such great specialists. So cases that require a lot of multidiscipline, you're able to give something to someone who maybe couldn't afford seeing a dentist when they're older. And when they were younger, or, they come here and maybe they didn't have a good experience, and we can give that to them. So I feel really blessed. So most of the time I'm in scrubs. I don't have to be in my uniform too much, which I'm really grateful for, but who knows, that may change at my next command.
Yeah. And in terms of working with products, are there any specific products that you have to work with? Do you use whatever you want in terms of brackets or something like that?
I wish we could use whatever we want, but really it just depends on legally what the country of Japan will allow me to come in. So in both, when you live overseas, you are a guest in the country, and where it's on called a status of forces agreement. It's called a SOFA agreement. So it allows me to be here for more than, let's say, a tourist visa or a work visa. But because of that, and we order things through a government system, you have to be in our government catalog. When you're not in our government catalog, it's really hard. So for example, 3M Unitech is a company that we do order a lot from, but if they run out of supplies or like they have, or things are back order, we have to find an alternative source. American Ortho, Dentsply. But sometimes, if I see a product at a conference I really like, or something that you even recommend, Glenn, I will have to kind of jump through a lot of hoops and probably wait up to 3 to 6 months. Sometimes things take almost my entire tour. So a couple things that I started making in my tour are actually just happening right before I left.
Wow.
And that's the hard part in the military is supplies. That's a really hard thing. And we're subject to the budgets of Congress. So if things don't pass through funding, we go without. So yeah. And you have to choose. I would love to do more TADs, but when I came here, I was out of brackets. So that's what took precedent.
Got it. That makes sense. I can tell you outside of the military, one of the things that we deal with a great deal is staffing shortages. We're having a real hard time because, again, I'm curious to hear the story more about from your angle, but from our angle, you have to find somebody who wants to work in ortho. They have to come in your office, right? There's a lot of difficulty for a lot of people properly hiring and staffing their teams up. Do you have a shortage of assistants in front desk, or because it's the military, do we just assume there's always somebody that can be filled into a position?
We are always undermanned. I would tell you that the places that get filled the first are operational. So if you're on a ship or it's getting deployed, they're filled. But again, you're not going to have orthodontists or a lot of specialists there. Our assistants are corpsmen, which means they're really medics, and they just go to dental assistant training for about a month, but it's very, very basic. So most of the time, orthodontics and pediatrics are the two areas that are hardest for us to fill. And I think it's because we work with a lot of kids. Right. And, I have a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-olds, but this is their first job, first thing away from home. And unless they're innately good with kids, it's kind of hard to recruit them for my department. But, I am grateful for the ones I have. But yes, there are days I would tell your colleagues, like you have your assistant Collins, like there are days where my assistants are fine, but because they have to do other military duties, they get pulled. That happens to me all the time. So you just learn just to roll with it, and you pick and choose your battles that you can fight to hold on to your people. So
I like that metaphor for the Navy, right? Pick and choose your battles. In your time you treat patients, which is typically, if I understood your schedule correctly, after the sick call or whatever I think it was called, from 8 to 11 and 1 to 4, that's your patient time. In those 6 hours, right? You have 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. How many patients will you typically see in a typical day? I'm just curious.
It depends on how many assistants I have. Right now, I just have one, so I'm only seeing about 10, maybe 11. And the thing that I know that doesn't sound very many, but one thing I have to tell my your audience is, they're not just my dental assistant. They're also answering the phones. They're scheduling the patients. They're taking the things to CSR. They're uploading photos. They're taking x-rays. We're tag team. And then at the same time, I get pulled for meetings because I've been second command, or I've been acting officer in charge, which means I'm in charge of 60 personnel and 16 other dental officers.
Wow.
I get pulled. So there's been days and times where literally I've had my hands in someone's mouth and I get tapped on the shoulder that I have to leave. And I got the parent right there. And so you learn really good how to handle crisis management. You really learn how to handle customer service very well, and how to manage expectations. And it's tough. You get stuff dropped on you all the time. But, I think that's kind of the beauty of it, is it really is a testament of kind of how you set up your day and what you can do to fool yourself. And so for me, that's why I work out in the morning, because I want to know I did something for myself to kind of rev up my engines to really take on, whatever comes at me, and try to handle it with a lot of patience and grace.
I think just like that keynote from that admiral, when you make your bed in the morning, right? If you haven't seen that one, when you make your bed in the morning, it sets the day because you've accomplished something, and then you go accomplish something else. And, and you can side skirt this question in any way you like. You can refuse to answer, but it's a two-parter. Number one, you're part of the online community. You see what gets posted in Orthopreneurs and other places. Number one, are you ever jealous of, or are you happy that you're not when you look at private practice, right? Are you ever jealous of us in private practice, or you go, gosh, I'm so happy I'm not in private practice? And number two, could you ever see yourself down the road eventually getting into private practice and being out of the military?
I'm going to actually answer that in reverse. So starting with, at one point, all of us get out of the military. I'm committed for 4 more years. I'm going to hit my retirement. But after that, how long I stay in the military, we'll see. Depends on promotion, depends on my personal life, depends on kind of like the direction of how the Navy Dental Corps goes. And because we are a very small community. I'm not sure if your audience knows, but there's only 14 Navy orthodontists in the entire world. That is it.
Really? That's it?
Yeah, that is it.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
not very many of us. So we're not, even though we do a lot and we're kind of like the quarterbacks of the football team, we do not, no one dies from crooked teeth. And we cost the military a lot of money. And when we put braces on someone, we are preventing them from going do certain things because we need to see them so often. So we're not as, I don't want to say as highly valued. People do value us, but let's just say if they've got to pick and choose, they're going to, you know what I mean? There's something that has to give.
Absolutely.
And so one day, yes, I do see myself getting out. I do see myself in private practice. Absolutely. There is things that I see my colleagues do that I wouldn't say jealous, but I would say, gosh, I can't wait to try those things. Or gosh, I would love to do that. I would love to do more clear liner cases. I would love to do more Marfie cases. I see some of the things that online that people get to try and do and are not under the same limits as I am. But I think it's also having gratitude for where I'm at. I mean, I've been able to travel to over 50 countries. I've practiced on 3 continents and I don't have any debt. Like I've no student loan debt, nothing. And so I know that, with great experiences, also comes great responsibility. And my father was in private practice. So I worked at his office before I joined the military, and I did moonlight. It was in the States, and I hope to moonlight again, because running your own business, I think, is one of the most challenging things that you can ever do. And the fact that as orthodontists, we have to carry such large amounts of weight and have to be on and be there for so many people, to me has taught me that I really want to join a team. I don't see myself as a solo practitioner, but I love being part of a team. And that's something I hope to have in future private practice.
That's fair enough. And it sounds like you're giving a good pageant answer, right? Like, most Americans can't find, Iraq on a map. Can you tell me? You remember that one? I'm not even going to get into that.
Yeah.
We're not getting into Miss South Carolina.
That's okay. You know what? She got more fame than the girl who even won the system that year. So in fact, she actually did a good PR stunt.
I mean, it went from, I just remember that answer went from bad to worse. And even Mario Lopez, who was doing it, was laughing when at first it was because they don't have a map. And then it just got worse from there. But the reason I bring up pageants to everybody out there is because you are a pageant title holder, not just Miss, it's Miss US, right?
I won Miss United States.
Right, Miss United States. And we're not just talking about Miss United States, and we're not just talking about Miss International, and we're not just talking about Miss Earth. We're talking the galaxy, the whole galaxy, right? You've won all those titles, have you not?
I have. I got into pageantry as a complete dare from some jerk in dental school, to be honest. You kidding me? There's no way a military commander father would have let me do that as a little girl. There's no way. So it wasn't until dental school. So I got into pageantry very late, and I met a group of women who have the same love and camaraderie, who have been there, like my colleagues in the military. When I got offered a spot in Texas, there's not really a lot of water in Texas. It was my pageant friends who put me up and helped me find a place to live and help me get settled. And that's what military families do. And even to this day, my pageant friends are the ones who I stay with at conferences. The military does not always fund for us to come back to conferences. So when I went to the Southwest Society meeting that happened last October, my pageant friends were the people that I stayed with, who drove and picked me up from the airport and put me up at their homes. And so to me, yes, there are the crazy women, don't get me wrong, and the women where the apple fell pretty far from the tree. But for the most part, it's made me a better naval officer, because let's be honest, you walk into an interview or you're on national television and you're asked some tough questions. You have to know how to be poised, articulate, concise, and so confident that no one's not going to question anything you say. And in the military, I have to do that every single day.
That's amazing. And I have no doubt that it's opened a number of doors for you, right? In terms of opportunities and responsibility, as you mentioned. I'm not stalking you online, but I've seen a lot of your photos of where you've been and what you've done and the magazines you've been in and the podcasts you've been interviewed on. Personally, I'm thrilled that, you're out there winning these things as an orthodontist, because you're spreading the word about not just, a couple of things here and there, but ortho's part of your fabric. It's who you are, and it can only bring good stuff to us. I want to go back just for a second, relative to your traveling. You said you've been to 50 countries at this point. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. There's no favorite. Let's just put it out there. All countries are great, right? I feel like I'm talking to a bunch of first graders. All children are great. But if I could ask you, look, here's a round trip ticket paid to any two countries. You can go back to any two countries right now. Which two countries would you choose? I figured two, that way we don't make just one, right?
I would say Thailand would be one of them.
Okay.
I had such amazing experiences in the country, from climbing pyramids to riding elephants to laying with tigers and having probably the most exotic, incredible food I've ever had in my life. And so to me, talk about just one incredible experience after another. So I'd love to go back. I've been there twice and I'd love to go back.
I'd love to go there one day myself.
Yeah. So that would definitely be one place for sure. A second place that I would love to go to is, gosh, I'm just trying to think there. It's like you asking a woman to pick out her favorite shoes in the closet. Like she only gets to pack one pair of shoes.
That's why I asked for two. I didn't ask for one. I asked for two.
Yeah. I kind of go back and forth on this. So I'll
give me three. If you got two others and you want to throw them both together, it's okay.
Well, I have to say Italy, because even though I did live in Sicily, I learned the language. I had childhood dreams that came true in a country unexpectedly on so many levels. And even during the pandemic, I watched the pandemic. I was there where I would get pulled over by polizia and have to say, lavora ad ospedale, in Sigonella, I'd have to speak the Italian that I knew, which is not very much. And there they speak Sicilian, which is like completely different, But I had people who really became part of my family there. And, my mom had to get a shoulder surgery when I promoted to commander. My Italian genitore, which is like my mom and dad, they actually put my commander bars on me. So, Italy, they're living there. I realized there are so many places off the beaten path that most people don't know about. People think of Rome and Venice and Napoli and the Amalfi Coast, but to know all these hidden places, it's a place I hope to get married someday, whenever I meet Prince Charming. So I would definitely say that whole country in itself. And then the third place would be outside of Paris, France. So France is something French is something I have a lot on my butt. It's one of the few countries besides Sweden that people actually think I'm there until they hear my American accent say bonjour or enchanté. And then they're like, okay, you're American. But it's not so much just the city, it's the stuff outside the city that is so neat to see in the countryside, like the Loire Valley, Saint Michel, Normandy. There's so much that I haven't seen. It's a really great city to be a jumping board to so many great things, driving distance in the country.
Can't disagree with the word you said. Never been to Thailand. I hope to go. Italy is my favorite. Florence is the only country I could ever imagine, I said, that I could live in tomorrow outside the US.
You mean the city that you could live in? Yes.
Yeah. Like if you said to me tomorrow, you have to pick another. I'm Jewish, and so I love Israel. But if somebody said outside of Israel in the United States, you have to pick a city that you can live in forever, and you have to move there tomorrow, Florence in a heartbeat, like instantly. It's such. I
can even tell you cities that are even more beautiful than Florence. Florence is wonderful. Don't get me wrong, but even the Umbria or the Assisi region that's right next to Tuscany, most people don't know about them, and because they're so untouched, you would get incredible experiences. But Israel's on my list too. I'm not Jewish, but I studied I was raised Catholic, but I love the Jewish. I studied Judaism in college and loved it. And so, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I even done Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur with my friends.
That's better than many Jews. Many Jews haven't done Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So good for you. And we can always have a conversation about that. And and like you said, like places like San Gimignano in the Tuscan region are spectacular. I couldn't live there yet. Give me another 10 years and I'm a little older and slower, probably. And I have to ask you another question about Japan. I have a friend who did, if he's listening, Aaron, I won't mention his last name, but if he's listening, he spent 6 weeks on a liquid natural gas carrier when he was a merchant marine. And he told me that they would fill up with all their supplies in Japan, Fukuyama, I think he said, And they would travel around and they'd come back every 6 weeks and they'd fill up. And he said that the ice creams that they have in Japan are these confectioner ice creams that you can't find anywhere else in the world, that are these crazy flavors and colors. And it's like, he said they take their ice cream really seriously in Japan. Have you seen the same thing? Like, is there stuff there that you've looked at and said, oh my gosh, like, why did they not have this in the US?
Well, they do take their ice cream seriously, but I might be a bit jaded coming from Italy, known for their dolce and desserts, that the ice cream here is good, but it's gelato is just a whole nother level. What I would say that they have taken to another level, obviously the sushi here is incredible. Their Wagyu beef is unparalleled to anything we have in the States. But, beyond the food, which is incredible, I would say their transportation system is on a whole nother level. The Shinkansen is a high-speed bullet train that I'm going a week from Friday, and I will deeply miss that, because it literally it feels like the world is passing you by. It's even faster than the Eurail. And wow. I so wish we had something like that in the United States. But you have to remember, Japan is the size of California with a third of the population of the US. So they built this when their economy was crushed after World War II, as a way to connect the countryside as well as all the major cities. So
I've seen the pictures of rush hour in Japan with the trains and the dedicated pushers who have gloves and push people into the train with the gloves. I was like, I'm going there. I got to go experience being pushed in. I mean, I grew up in New York. I've been pushed in trains, but not into trains. And so again, Japan, another bucket list. You're living a great life. And so, the last thing I want to hit on before we go is you've done some TED Talk, right? You've done some TED Talking. And I'd love you to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So I just did my first TED Talk in March of 2023, and the talk is live on TED.com. So I'll make sure to send you the link, Glenn. And
that'd be awesome.
It was, the title of the talk is How Changing the Game Matters to Your Success. And the core idea of the talk is, when you seek the unattainable, you change the game. And what I go through is I give 3 lessons and 3 areas where people can apply, where I go into a story of something that happened in my life, what I learned, and kind of really what to take to it and apply. I think that every one of us has had struggles and had obstacles, but, especially in the audience we're talking to, if we let that one person or that one thing in our life stop us from doing, we wouldn't be the men and women we are today. We wouldn't be the person who can really look back and say, you know what? I'm glad things didn't go my way, because to me, that success is when you learn how to pick yourself up off the ground when things didn't go the way you want. And that happens, I would say, probably to us every week, whether it's in our office, in our personal lives, or in our profession with a case where you're just scratching your head. And to me, I find really great solitude in having other colleagues to go to, or having mentors or coaches. And so for me, getting into the speaking world with the TEDx was great. And I have to thank the American Association of Orthodontics and the people who had me get me on stage, because doing a 90-minute talk was a true test of speaking skills. But between that, it really opened the doors. And I hope to do more TED Talks in the future.
We've got several stressors in our life. We've got a great profession, but we've got to deal with overhead. We've got to deal with productivity. We got to deal with team members that are outside of our control sometimes. And the great news is, all of these issues are addressed in depth in this year's curriculum at Orthopreneur Summit. So please go to opsummit2023.com, sign up for the meeting that's almost sold out, that everybody's going to be talking about, that you really need to be at to be your best practice with the lowest stress and highest profitability. opsummit2023.com. Please join me there so that I can take care of you even better than you take care of your patients. This has been an amazing time for me. I always have fun talking to people, but this has been especially enlightening, fun, inspirational. You are doing so many remarkable things. Usually I like to do a recap. There's too much. There's too many things you're doing, Commander. And by the way, is it Commander Doctor? Is it Doctor Commander? Does such a thing exist, or just because one's military and one's professional?
One's military, one is professional. But if you want to get the whole story, shameless plug, I do have a book on Amazon called Commander to Crown. So you can definitely see a lot and get a good taste there. And if you want to know, like, how do you get up on your crazy days or your days where things go wrong, I got lots of things in there that I share, as well as a lot of great resources. And if any of your audience wants to know, how do you juggle everything you do, or how did you find the people that you work with? Because your network is your net worth. That is how I believe it, where it comes to personal development, you name it. And any other, I'm more than happy to share that with your audience, because to me, I'm a firm believer in, Neil Kravitz's famous words, colleagues over competition. And a lot of people who I truly admire, like yourself, who are so giving and so generous to a profession, that I truly hope that continues on.
Thank you. Commander to Crown at your Amazon bookseller near you. I'm definitely going to be ordering. I knew you'd do it. I was going to finish with that, but being as good as you are, you beat me to it. Your story is remarkable. I mean, there's so many cool things in there. I appreciate the insights into the geography lessons, travel lessons as well. And I hope to do this again with you at some point down the road after you've come back to San Diego. And hopefully there's somebody listening out there who's listening. They want a moonlighting orthodontist. Hopefully somebody out there is listening, because I think I might know somebody who might be available for a job in the next few months. So thank you for being here today. And thank you for your contribution to the world of orthodontics. And most importantly, in this case, for your service, because without people like you, there'd only be 13 orthodontists worldwide. And it's a remarkable number, by the way. It's remarkable.
We're a fan club. We're a small community. Yes.
It's crazy. But thank you for everything you do. And thank you for being here today, Corinne. I really mean it from the bottom of my heart.
It's my pleasure. And as they would say in Japan, arigato gozaimasu.
Arigato, what's the second part? Gozaimasu. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Take care. Be safe. And wishing you a safe trip stateside.